The latest edition of the 4D Human Being podcast, we are going to do a flashback to a fabulous episode. It's our top downloaded episode from July 2021. It's episode 51 and it's a conversation with the wonderful Jessie Pavelka from Pavelka. Jessie and I shared so many insights and so many kind of passions, things that really get us fired up around how we can get back to choice in really tough times. And what I thought was so interesting about re-listening to this episode was that we recorded it at a time where we'd really just about come out of the pandemic and we were all expecting things to be really rosy and, you know, all kind of easy and better. And a lot of us faced actually a whole new set of problems. And similarly now, it feels like we've been through a lot. Surely things should be better, but actually a lot of businesses and a lot of people are facing really tough times and, you know, job layoffs and huge change. So this episode feels so relevant. We shared so much about how you can get back to choice, get back in control. We both absolutely loved revisiting the 4D human being phrase. Are you happening to the world or is the world happening to you? We talked about you've got choice. We talked about really accepting where you are. Jessie had a great phrase for that. Really being able to sit in the moments that rock your world and then to take action from there. It's full of practical tips of how you can really get back on a pathway of positivity and choice, and that it's down to you. You know, we can wait for others, we can wait for the world, but actually we need to take the reins. We need to take control of our own well-being and our own choices and our own pathway. There's so much in it. I absolutely loved listening to this episode again. We share so much and we both care so much about this work, and Jessie and Jill and everyone at Pavelka work so much from heart as we do at 4D Human Being. So from my heart to yours, here is one of our absolute favourite 4D Human Being podcast episodes again. Do enjoy and take really, really good care. So here I am, Philippa Waller.
Yes.
And here are you, Jessie.
We are here.
We are here, and that's as much as we need to know for the moment. So I am here with the utterly delightful Jessie Pavelka. Hello, Jessie.
Hello, Philippa. How are you?
I'm good. I am well, which is a relevant answer for our discussion today, which is going to be an initial discussion on well-being. Although, don't you think that the question, how are you, has become increasingly sort of complex? It used to be such a simple question, didn't it?
Well, and I think the answer to the question is the most revealing bit, because I think I'm good, right? That tends to be everyone's autopilot answer. It's not good enough anymore, right? I think we're now like forcing ourselves to go a few layers deeper, which I think is a gift of COVID, right? Because you can't hide behind positivity. You can't hide behind any of the, protective mechanisms that you have. It's an important question. Which
for some people, I imagine, is very welcome. And for other people, the truth to that answer might be less welcome.
I find myself squirming in my seat sometimes when people ask me, how are you doing? And it's like, I don't know that I really want to tell you right now.
Exactly.
It hasn't been the greatest day.
There's a place for the social persona, isn't there? Let's be clear. Yeah, somebody said to me recently that actually you need to ask the question twice. How are you? No. How are you? Yeah. Anyway. So, Jessie, for those people who don't yet have the pleasure of knowing who you are and what you do, can you give us the intro, the sort of the Jessie Pavelka biog? Again, not an easy question, but give us the kind of top line of, well, look, this is kind of who you are and how you got into it and what you do.
I think that's the scarier question. Who are you? How are you? And then who are you? I think, when people ask me this, it's weird because I go on a journey back in time to think about where I've been, and we'll start there. So I'm a trainer by trade. I started out as a trainer working in a gym, just like all trainers. And I wanted to challenge myself. So I decided to work with people that needed it. So I specialized in bariatrics. I went on a journey working with those clients and really started to understand what they needed, and through that, really understanding what I needed. From there, I was able to do some really cool things in the TV space. I did NBC's Biggest Loser, a show in the UK called A Year to Save My Life. I did a small stint on Oprah's network, a few other cool things that, that came along the way. But I find myself always going back to my early days, working with individuals, rolling up my sleeves and really getting to know what's going on with them and what they need. And now kind of fast forwarding to the last 5-6 years of my life, I've been working in the B2B space. One of our big clients, Cisco Systems, comes to mind. And we try to bring well-being solutions to the human beings within organizations. It's not about working with employees. It's about working with people. Everything we do is based around the 4 elements: eat, sweat, think, and connect. And it's a holistic, inclusive approach to bring well-being into your life each and every day in a simple, sustainable way.
Fabulous. Sign up here, everyone. So we're gonna dig a bit more into that. And obviously you and I have met through this work and through a client that we have in common that you mentioned. And we've done a kind of, you've invited me onto a couple of platforms where you've been championing and celebrating Pavelka pioneers who are, part of the kind of the wave or the ripple effect, if you like, of what you do and how people really pick up the work and run with it. And we'll talk about it. But it's really been in this well-being space. And you and I both have 4 elements, 40 human beings over here, and you have 4 elements. So we were like, well, there's got to be a lot in common. We've both got 4 things. Yeah. And there's lots of crossover. So we're going to have a chat about well-being at work, I guess, particularly, because that's a lot of our work. We're both business to business, although those tentacles, I'm sure, will spread business to consumer. And we'll also talk a bit about the context of sort of right now and what's been going on this year. And also, I think that thing of everybody was so excited about this year, like somehow Christmas and New Year of 2020 was some like massive watershed where we were just going to explode into 2021 and everything was going to be great. And of course, it's like coming out of a difficult illness. Like there's consequences, there's impact that we're still dealing with, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was this fantasy that, we were going to come out of our caves and the sun was going to be shining and everything was going to be back to normal. And that wasn't the case, which I think was really hard for people. It was hard for me. There was just this fantasy that like things are going to be so much better in 2021.
I think it's such a good way of putting it, because I think that January, February, I'm going to say into March. I mean, I had a lot of personal stuff going on with my family as well, so that impacted. Yeah. But I still really got the sense that there was this, exhaustion. And I'm sort of saying it sort of slightly lightly and humorously as a sort of way of dealing with actually what it felt like. But I really felt it in the field. Yeah. And I think what you say is really relevant, that actually if we set up the expectation and we set up the fantasy and it's way out there, it's a bit like Penelope and I have joked about, the sort of fantasy of, wearing hot pants and rollerblading. Like the distance you've got to fall from that fantasy to reality is a long way. And actually, I think that's partly what happened, is the realization of the gap between fantasy 2021 and actually what it felt like was quite a blow, I think, this year.
Yeah. I think we had to really get our feet back on the ground and deal with reality, which I think has been a real gift for all of us. Like sitting with reality. Like, I don't know about you, but like I get excited about how things could be. And you're a visionary. You have your own company. You work with visionaries, and there's this part of our brain that gets really creative and thinks about the future and how it could be. Sometimes it's hard for us to sit in the here and now. And I think the gift, that I've noticed from my own personal life is just being able to sit with the discomfort of what we've been living through. Hasn't been fun, but it's also been really helpful in a lot of ways.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because discomfort wasn't necessarily one of the words I thought we'd explore talking about well-being, but it's so true, because that fear of the discomfort means that we have lots of sort of stress coping strategies to avoid actually feeling what we might be feeling. Yeah. And so a huge part of well-being is actually allowing yourself to go, oh, this doesn't feel too good, but I'm in it. Yeah. and I'm going to feel it, you know.
What comes to mind for me is the definition of well-being, because it's confusing, right? It says a state of comfort, happiness, and health, right? But comfort's confusing because comfort's created through discomfort, right? We get to that place where we can sit in those moments that really rock our world. And when we can do that, that is the comfort. Like being able to sit with that struggle.
It feels so important, because I think you're so right. When we think of well-being, we think kind of apples and fresh air, running through poppy fields. You know, everything's kind of well. We're being well. But it's so true that such a big part of it is really not avoiding the difficult moments, difficult conversations, difficult feelings, because we know now that if we do that, we'll end up not having well-being, we'll end up being unwell, because those feelings will go somewhere. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, you go. What were you going to say?
I don't know now. I just lost it. It was going to be really good, though.
It was, and this is what happens. We have to accept the discomfort of missing the gem. There'll be more gems. There'll be more gems to come. Well, I was just thinking, actually, because you and I could chat away forever. So I'm going to take the baton of structure and put some questions around well-being and kind of pull back a bit. So you touched on the 4 elements, but I guess even pulling back, and we've sort of touched on what we've begun to touch on what well-being is and perhaps how we think about it, but maybe we've got a bit of a narrow view of it. I think about this in terms of some of the kind of work that we do at 4D around leadership impact, that sometimes we just need to go back to the word impact and explore what we really mean, because these words get overused, don't they? It's like diversity and well-being, and they end up just people going, oh, right, it's a well-being thing. And we don't really think about what it means. So what is well-being, Jessie? You know, what is it for you? What is it for Pavelka? What is it? How should we think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you hit the nail on the head. I think we have words that mean certain things to us, but then we reassess and they mean different things at different times. And well-being, there's been a journey, a transformation that's happened in my life, but also what I've seen in other people's lives, given, what we've been living through. The definition of state of comfort, happiness, and health is the standard definition. But I think if we apply well-being to the human experience of today, it's what you've said, actually. It's sitting with feeling, sensation, perception, all of those very human things that we have, sitting with whatever those things are for you in your current reality, and embracing the good parts, and being willing to lean into the actions that you need to take whenever you're not feeling at your best. I think that for me is what well-being is right now. It's an overall awareness of how you're feeling and a willingness to engage in the behaviors that are going to give you a sense of freedom. And I think that, the tagline over the top of this is how you feel is important, good or bad.
Yeah.
And that's it. And
boy, has that not been the lesson over sort of previous generations, or even, even through one's youth. It's sort of, come on, get on with it. And I love that you say that, because I think the danger with well-being is that it can be maybe unconsciously interpreted or unconsciously implemented in a kind of avoidant way. If I eat this fruit, do this juicing, go for this run with gritted teeth, I won't have to feel what I'm feeling. And actually what you're talking about is all of those things need to be in support of acknowledging what's actually going on for you, so that you can then take charge of shifting it. It's like the change process, isn't it? That you can't make changes until you acknowledge where you are.
Yeah.
And, we talk about that a lot in therapy. I have people coming in who just want to get rid of this feeling. I don't want to feel this anymore. And almost unconsciously, if you were to give a voice to the unspoken in the therapy room, sometimes it's, don't acknowledge there's anything wrong, but fix it. And I think that can be a real danger,
Yeah.
So I really like what you say about engage with all of it, as opposed to just try to push it down and go for a run. That's not what you're saying.
No. And I think, this idea of avoidance, I mean, I've done it. I probably am doing it now in some part of my life, right? Like, it's tough.
That's the thing about being human, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, we don't want to look at those. And this is just my own, I'm not a therapist. I'm just as my own personal experience and working with people alongside people like you that really understand this stuff. Those things that you avoid live somewhere, right? They live somewhere, and they live in your body. They live in your shoulders and your neck. They live in your lower back. And you can try to suppress them all you want, but they're going to resurface. They're going to come out as feedback in some way, either the way you show up that you are blind to, or a part of your body, your physiology that starts to have you walk a certain way or sit a certain way. So just looking at those things, and not in the most relaxed and calm way you can, looking at those things, I think, is the starting point for a lot of people right now. Like, where are those places I'm not willing to go there, right?
Oh, it's so true. I was just talking to a very dear friend of mine this morning about these messages are so often coming to us, aren't they? Because for me, like a really simple example is the yoga pose that you always want to avoid or don't want to do. And it's going to be the one that is the one you need to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so true. It's like you always find on the other end of struggle, that's when the magic is happening, right? When you get to the other end of that race, crossing the finish line wasn't easy. You didn't want to do it. Or maybe your first day of running, right? Where you're training for a marathon or a 5K. You don't want to show up. You don't want to tie your shoes. You don't want to go out the front door. But it isn't until you get to the other end, right? Coming back inside of the house or crossing the finish line, we're like, damn, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's really easy to say that. It's hard to put that perspective into practice in real time.
Yeah. And I've written down the words. I want to come back to that, but I'm aware that I could easily, as we talk and as we have amazing conversations that we often have, Jessie, I'm aware of how much I want to kind of go charging down a path, because I'm always kind of grabbed by things that you say and that we end up talking about. But I want to talk about motivation. I think it feels really important. There's a piece that we're always putting into the pieces that we do at 4D, and we'll talk about our different approaches. There's a piece now that we always make sure we put in, which is around how do you break and make habits? Because it's all very well, isn't it, having the tools and the kind of the schedule, but it's how do you actually do it? You know you'll feel good at the end of the run, but you don't feel good the thinking about it. So how do you do it? So we'll come back to that. But let's talk about our approach, because we talked about we both have 4s, which apparently I think this is right, in China, the number 4 is not a good number, I don't think. Do you know about that?
I know about 13, but that's not China, is it? That's Japan.
I think 4 is like someone said to me, it's like death or something. Anyway, I don't know if that's true. But anyway, so we might have to have 5 in China.
We might have to change it when we get into that
exactly.
We can
always add an element, add a dimension. So at 4D, we have the physical, emotional, intellectual, and intentional dimensions that we come back to in terms of that sort of holistic overview. So physically, how you're showing up or how you're feeling, emotionally, how you feel, how you make other people feel, intellectually, how are your thoughts supporting you, or what's your narrative, if you like, and then, of course, the intentionality. What actually are you actually at choice? Are you actually making decisions and driving your behaviors or your impact? So we use that whether we're looking at well-being or leadership, team impact. That's the 4 pieces. And of course, the context for us of other people and environment, the 2 contexts, because we live in a world. So those are our 4. So talk to me about your 4, because there's some crossover there, but there's also some different pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, before
you go to
dive into that, I just want to say that I've had the pleasure of having you support me in 4D model, just in a small way, but I have to say that the awareness that it creates is massive, and I know that we're going to be working with your team as well for the Pavelka team to really understand how to have more impact in the virtual world, which I think we could all use. I love your 4 pillars, and I don't think that our 4 elements compete at all with what you guys have. It's a value add on both sides.
Yeah, I totally agree. I agree. And I very much have yours in my head now, because we've sort of gifted each other some of our work. So so right back at you, Jessie. It's lovely. They're really complementary. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit more about the 4 elements. Yeah.
So the 4 elements are eat, sweat, think, and connect. I think we can all agree that we understand nutrition and exercise. A lot of us look at it as the more logical approach to our health. The difference between that and the elements, dieting or doing an exercise program, is you're really the one driving the behaviors. So you've got eat, sweat, think, and connect, but you're looking at them in a different way. It's not prescriptive. It's about going into your world, keeping the elements in mind, and really defining how you as an individual eat, sweat, think, and connect. Now, the purpose behind this is, once we empower an individual with the elements and they start to make sense of them in their own life, there's a story to tell, hopefully over a period of time, right? And if I go back to my early days as a trainer, the idea was, okay, I'm going to bring these elements into your life. I'm not going to give you a diet. I'm not going to give you an exercise program. I'm going to have you become more aware of your thought life, what's going on each and every day. I want you to write a lot of things down. And I want you to pay attention to the people in your world. Who are you connecting with? Who's supportive? Who isn't? And just make a note of that. Now, it was interesting. The people that took this seriously, took the elements into their world, it wasn't that they had massive gains, or I guess in this case, losses. It was the sustainability of the behaviors. And I think that's what gets lost for a lot of us is we do a 6-week program, we get some great results, but we aren't the one driving it. Someone's telling you what to do. It's not like a thing that you're owning. And so the elements are unique to you. And the purpose behind them is having an experience with the elements that you can then gift the world, sharing your story. We empower people with the elements, but we also empower them to share their story. And I think that part of it, which creates the community, the Pavelka community that the pioneers are a part of. And I think that part of it is what keeps people going. You've got the elements for you as an individual. Then you've got a story that will impact the lives of other human beings. It's really simple, but if you do it, it keeps you going. It's that sustainable formula for your life.
Yeah. And it's so interesting hearing you speak, because I remember somebody who actually works for the client that we both work with, Cisco. It was a few years ago. We ran a session and he said, I must introduce you to my boss and over in the States. And I said, lovely. And he said, how shall I introduce you? And I said, well, you could talk about us doing leadership communication skills. And he said, but it's so much more than that, isn't it? And as I hear you talk, I really felt that this time, hearing you talking about the work, that you up front, you'll talk about well-being, and then you'll look at the 4 elements. But it's so much more than that. And it takes some unraveling, or it takes some experiencing. You have to have a starting point, don't you, to communicate kind of this kind of work and what you do. Actually, when I hear you talking, that sense of agency over your own choices, that idea of the power of story, which if you started with that, people would go, what? How am I going to feel better through story? But, suddenly you go, it's got so much depth to it. And when you really understand that, suddenly it's about who you are. That answers our question at the beginning of, who are you? That answers the big existential question. No, but it's more about who you are. And one of the things that we talk a lot about at 4D is that there's a lot of people talking about the things you've got to do. Here are the what's you've got to do, or the why, the purpose. Yeah. But actually, often the how gets really lost. Is how you do it every single day, how you show up, how you choose to live your life. Yeah, which I really hear.
And I think getting into the how is getting into the action, and a lot of times, definitely the why is developed over time. Sometimes it's like you just get into the behavior, right? Yeah. Like get into it and just see what happens, right?
Oh, God, it's so true, Jessie. It's so true, because it may, one could go into the sort of the existential writers of the early part of the last century. Like, you can get lost in that existential tunnel of why. What's the saying? It's why it's turtles all the way down. There's no, at the bottom of the why, there's no why. Just, there's that lovely quote by a man called Jerry Sternin, is it's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than think your way into a new way of acting. I think I mentioned this to you before. And that's what I really hear is actually, at some point you've got to shift the loop, stop thinking about planning and thinking about it. And my partner and I are absolutely determined to get a personal trainer that we're going to share. Yeah. We just need to make the phone call. We
the
talk about
getting heavier and heavier.
The phone's getting heavier and heavier. My fingers stop working. And it's not. We talk about it, what we want, what day of the week might work. Like, we've had all those conversations. Yeah. We just need to make a phone call. Yeah, it's the action.
That's the thing. I think there's. I don't know exactly how your brain works, but
I don't think I know exactly how my brain
I would imagine you go really big. With your ideas, and it's the reason that you're good at what you do, and you have your business. And for some people, that first step is really hard to look at. It's not as exciting as the finished product. Yeah. And I think that's been a real struggle for a lot of people that we've worked with, is managing expectations of what impact is. but also getting them to get out of that kind of finish line mindset where once I get there, it'll be good, it'll work, it'll be worth it, right? And I think getting people to step back and say, okay, here and now, another gift of COVID, sitting in my reality, right? What will take me out of this place that I'm in, right? If you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, taking that first step into a behavior that, give you some kind of relief. I think that, and in well-being, being on the other end of that, the food you eat, how often you move or how you move, engaging in a practice that supports your mental and emotional well-being, and then or connecting with someone that loves you and supports you. Like, that's all it takes is just an awareness of those 4 areas: eat, sweat, think, and connect, and defining that one little step for yourself.
And to give those things value, because what I'm also really hearing is, I really hear that we are very results orientated in our culture, certainly in the West. And also, I think with the whole, I know it is, it's just true, with the whole, with social media, like there's that pressure, isn't there, to be instantly, just, I've got to look like that instantly. And also it stops becoming one's own. It's exactly going back to agency. It stops being your own version of well-being. It's got to be their version of, it's got to look like them. Yeah. And it's a sort of non-starter, isn't it? Because, what's that phrase, be yourself, everyone else is taken. Like, you've got to be you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I think we are living in a time, like, I think we understand technology. We, social media, we get it, we scroll. And by the way, I don't know if you've had this, but I find myself just scrolling and scrolling at times. I'm like, hours. And you can't stop.
And part of your brain is saying stop. But the hand keeps going. I know.
It's that dopamine hit. But, we've got this brain that can rationalize to a point what we're looking at. But the way it lands on us emotionally, and I'm fascinated by the brain. I'm not a neuroscientist, but not really understanding the impact that it's having on us in a deeper, like, untouchable place where we don't even realize it, but we're not feeling good about ourselves. Or there's a sense of FOMO and you don't really understand. It's very confusing. And I think that for a lot of us, we go to social media. It gives us something. It gives us a hit of dopamine. But so do a lot of other bad things that we gravitate to. But on the other end of it is like this loss of some kind. And we can't rationalize that.
And I wonder if we don't always make the connection. There's that Netflix film, isn't there, Social Dilemma? And it's actually quite terrifying when you realise that, exactly as you say, it's all happening undercover. And it's an addiction because it's giving you less and less and less every time you get the hit. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole conversation there around
that was
well-being.
A spooky documentary.
But there's definitely something to talk about there around well-being and social media, because it's such a big part of our lives now and having such an impact that for all the good work that we do, most of us are also just sitting alongside this thing that's constantly tugging us down, and we don't even know it's happening. So, there's something that you said that I thought was so important, and it really, again, makes me think of the work in a therapy room. The connection, the connection piece and the network, and it's going to bring me to the kind of work that you do and how you do it in organizations, because we know that human beings are built for connection. We know there's lots of examples of this in terms of child development and our need for other, and that, we need food as a baby as much as we need connection. The research has also been done in the therapy room that one of the outcomes, one of the things that determines successful outcome is your belief in your therapist and the relationship and the work. Yeah. And that's going to be similar to Pavelka as well. Like, you've got to believe that these things are going to help you. Almost bigger factor is your network, is the support that you've got around you. So when you get a client who's very isolated and doesn't have any network, if you don't address that, you're really going to struggle, because it's very, very hard to do this stuff on your own. Like, it just is.
Yeah. And I think, there's that whole piece around your people, your tribe, and changing behaviors and getting rid of the thing that brings you together with people, good or bad, right? There's a grieving, there's a loss. And so, I found with people I've worked with in the past that, had issues around food, getting them to start eating healthy felt like a real loss, right? It was what brought them comfort, connection. The people that they hung out with did the same thing. And so there was this loss of tribe, loss of family that came along with it. So there's this point in time where they start to change behaviors, they start to feel good. you need to plug them into fellowship or community. And our model in Pavelka is very similar to your fellowship model. It's have an experience, work your steps, right?
Yeah.
Eat, sweat, think, and connect.
Yeah.
And then share it with someone. Be a quote unquote sponsor, an advocate, and share your story. That piece around community and fellowship is so important. That's where the sustainability is. And, you talked about the Pavelka pioneers. They are the sustainability.
Yeah.
They're the beating heart, right? They keep it going. And, in our work, finding those people is really important, especially in organizations. So.
Yeah. I feel so inspiring hearing you say that, because I've watched a few of the videos of the stories, and obviously Sheila, who we both know within Cisco, is fabulous, and one of your kind of founding
she's incredible.
Yeah,
she's a machine. I don't like calling people machines because
in a good way.
It makes them feel in a good way. Yeah, but it also implies that like they have to keep it up, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
Yeah,
but
I hear you. Yeah, she's a machine that can also rest sometimes. There you go.
Yes, she can unplug it. She knows how to take care of her well-being.
Yeah, but she's just a really good example. And I know that there's others, because having been on sessions with you when you celebrated some of the pioneers, like it's the story pieces that really stick. And we know that stories really sticky. Yeah. And like you say, that's the sustainability. And I think that's hugely inspiring. And I wonder if anybody listening actually to have a think about how you can apply that to whether you're running a team or whether you're whatever kind of work you're doing within organizations or in communities, is to really think, we talk so much about sustainability, but actually how do we really do it? And it's such a wonderful, real way of doing it. And funnily enough, I've talked to somebody who's works for a lobby group in terms of climate change and the environment. And something they've really struggled with is sustainability, obviously, and how do we connect people just in their homes to the bigger picture? And I just saw an invitation the other day to a webinar, and it was around story. It was how do we create the stories? And I was like, that's it. Like you have to have the stories that connect people to the bigger picture, or in your case, the kind of where somebody wants to be in 6 months' time. Yeah,
and I think it's all wrapped up in people want to be seen. They want to be heard, or they want to see themselves or hear themselves in another person. Mm-hmm. They want to feel like, and in that is a sense of belonging or connection, right? And I think if you can have a person represent a population through their own experience, you're doing something really important. And if you can continue to have that conversation in various ways, people feel seen, they feel heard. That's what we want, right? And I think that's a trick that a lot of people are missing, especially with COVID, right? We're driven by data and insights. We know a lot of people are struggling right now. Stress is higher than ever for a lot of people. Certain populations are struggling more than others. But we need to hear more stories. We need to hear conversations that bring people closer together. And if you don't understand a person, obviously being able to hear them and see the emotional impact of what they've been through or what they're going through, the other end of that is just the magic of empathy and compassion, right? Yeah. And I think that story across the board is what's needed more than ever right now, and human stories.
And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because it might surprise people listening that we're talking about story when I think people expect, if you're talking about well-being, people might expect you to be talking about what size dumbbells are you going to be ordering, but
it's a part of it.
It's definitely a part of it, but it's got to have that ground, hasn't it? And and I think a big part of one of the things that I really took away from one of the sessions you invited me to that we talked about was that you need that diversity of people who will tell their story and who will, in your case, become pioneers, or who will kind of champion the work. Because the danger is, otherwise we're looking at, from a female perspective, we're looking at the sort of uber fit, bendy yoga queen or bikini clad 20-year-old, or you're looking at the sort of, show my age here, the Arnie Schwarzenegger of the 2020s. Oh. And if we don't see people that we kind of feel like, I'm a bit like that. They like donuts too. So, I talk about donuts. But, otherwise...
I like donuts.
We like...
We can agree on that.
We can agree on that. But otherwise, it's just too unattainable. Yeah. There was something that you said earlier that I just want to sort of grab back, because it was around when you said that grieving process around giving up the donuts. We're gonna mention donuts a lot in this podcast. It's okay. But that people want to... they give themselves comfort food, or they like sitting on the couch, or all the things that have given them comfort. And firstly, I think we need so much self-compassion or other compassion. And there's a phrase that comes to mind that I loved when somebody said it to me around all kinds of behaviors that we do. And in some cases, extreme behaviors when people are really, struggling with functioning well, or drug addiction, or right instinct, wrong ritual. That your instinct is right, and we can give ourselves that win. That for those people who are sitting on the sofa just wanting to eat another packet of crisps, your instinct's good. You got the right instinct. You want to feel good. You want that comfort. It's just not necessarily the best ritual for your well-being.
Yeah. And I think, being able to step back from those behaviors and look at them clinically, right? Yeah. Not having such an emotional attachment to them. That's the skill, I think, that a lot of people, being able to develop that ability to sit in that, because in that is the discomfort that creates the comfort that I think we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then, transitioning to that thing you've been talking about but haven't done in a long time, that walk, or cooking that healthy meal for yourself, or calling your mom, right? It's like there's that thing on the other end that has to come into play quick too.
Yeah.
I love that though. Right instinct, wrong ritual.
Yeah, I know. I love that because it speaks to behaviors that are really challenging, like even drug addiction. Like there's a want there, there's a need there.
Yeah.
It's just that the ritual that you've chosen, the ritual that you've got yourself into, is doing you harm rather than good. But the need at the core of it is the same: to feel better, to have self-esteem, whatever it is.
Yeah, and that changes per person. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, Jessie, we're going to talk about what gets in the way, and we've talked about that a little bit, and I love that piece around grief, which I've never heard talked about around well-being, that when we give stuff up, of course,
it's a loss.
It's a loss. It's so true, isn't it? I mean, I haven't had alcohol for, I can't remember, I don't know, maybe nearly a year. And I definitely don't feel grief now. But there's definitely sort of those pieces around it that were very familiar, like less in COVID because we weren't seeing each other. So actually it's probably a really good time. Although I think drinking went up during COVID as opposed to down for most people. But actually there are parts of that you go, oh, I'm not part of that. Pop the Prosecco, lift up your flute. I have to adjust to not in those conversations in the same way. And I was looking at birthday cards for a friend and just noticing how so many birthday cards are just all about drinking. And just suddenly you go, oh, I can't join in that. Like she and I don't have that anymore. Like I can't buy that birthday card. So there's always losses. But of course, hopefully you get to the point where you go, oh, good loss.
It's funny you mentioned birthday cards. I'm in the UK right now, and my son's with me too, and I drop him off at school most days. Sometimes I have to get some support, but we listen to country music. Mm-hmm. I'm from South Texas, my dad was a country singer, so just it runs through my veins. But I was listening to the music, and every single song talks about alcohol. Yeah. It's like tequila, whiskey. Yeah. And it's just, it's fascinating to think about like how powerful these little subtle things are in our lives that cue that response, right? Whether it's a song, a smell, a color, there's those little things that just say, oh, I need to go do that right now. Yeah. And we're not even awake to those things, right?
There was the marketeers, apparently, the advertising gurus, again, in the West, sort of in the 60s, 70s, I remember there was something that was said like, we need to move from people feeling like they want to or need to go and buy something to they don't even know why they're doing it. Like it's just such an automatic response. And that was sort of the goal. It really makes me think, Jessie, I mean, there are no adverts. There's no, we are not sort of, we don't from a young age absorb adverts that connect eating a carrot with just like feeling amazing. But ice cream and crisps and like all of those things and alcohol have all been attached to excitement, joy, happiness, love, romance.
Yeah.
But, eating a carrot and hummus, they have not had that kind of PR on them, have they?
No. Think about that in itself, right? The journey that we're all on, like having to wake up and get to that place where it's like, oh, how I feel matters.
Oh, yes.
And those things that I'm doing don't really make me feel good, yet I feel like I need them, right? And it's a real struggle, I think, for people living in today's world, especially with, going back to social media. We've got so many cues, so many visual cues to say, buy this, do this. it's even worse than it was before. Driving down, I live in Los Angeles. Driving down the street, like it is sensory overload. All the billboards, all of the things that are screaming at you, trying to take your attention. And we're trying to get back to this place where we feel whole, fulfilled, we feel good.
Yeah.
And you have to be a real seeker to get there. Like you can't be asleep to that.
You've
got to be awake.
I love that. I think that feels really important, that waking up, not just in the mornings, but waking up is really the first big step to your own well-being.
That song "Breaking Up" is hard to do.
Yeah.
I think it's waking up is hard to do.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Yeah, waking up to what actually makes you feel good. So, Jessie, I'm aware of your time, and I wanted to talk about the work that you do in organisations. So, if an organisation were to approach you, what would that look like for them? What would they get? And we can kind of compare the different kinds of work that we do. And then perhaps we could offer people a couple of things around what they might think about. Yeah, so, the phone rings or someone asks for a meeting with you. What's it going to be like to have Pavelka coming in?
Having the phone ring and saying, "Hey, we're interested," that feels that I don't know if that'll ever happen again. But it depends on the needs. I think that's how we work. There is no static solution. We've got a variety of solutions, and so it's getting to know the organization, getting to know the needs of the people in the organization, working in partnership to then create something that works, not something that ticks a box, but something that is going to have impact on the individuals. Now, that shows up in a variety of ways. We can do live sessions. We can rah about well-being. We can talk about the 4 elements, or we can get really specific and talk about mental health, managing stress, talk about sleep. We've got a whole host of experts that we bring on board that can tick that box. But I think for us, the journey continued is, okay, great. We've got you awake now.
Yes.
We've got your attention. You're now a human being sitting in front of us, open and willing in a perfect case scenario. Yeah. You're open and willing. Now let's go on a journey. Let's plug you into a community and let's start a conversation in that community. We're not a tech company, but our technology is an enabler. So we've got an app that allows people as individuals to come in, plug into a community, but then also engage in challenges around the 4 elements, engage in programs that are geared around the 4 elements. The thing about our programs as is, they're not an individual experience. They're a team experience. Mm-hmm. We want to have that conversation come to life. That's where accountability is created. That is where change occurs. So you go on a journey as an individual, you're plugged into the technology. Wrapped around the technology are unique experiences, life sessions. We also figure out who your passionate people are. So we find, okay, who are the people that are going to be our ambassadors of well-being in this organization? We find them, we equip them with the tools that they need to keep the conversation alive on the ground. And we repeat this, throughout the year, depending on who we're working with. Mm-hmm. It just depends. But we've got an in the room on the screen and in your hand solution. I say in the room, it's virtual right now.
Yeah, although it's shifting. I think people are starting to talk. It's hybrid. We're talking hybrid.
You're already back at work in offices.
Yeah, we've had a couple. Right? Yeah, good. And so it's really organizational wide, isn't it, for you? And really also really listening to what's needed. And I really hear that, because we're running a session for a client tomorrow, and we changed one of the tools because of what we were hearing, that for one of the pieces we do is around relational well-being, and that could be all sorts of things. It might be that people are overwhelmed and not able to set boundaries, so maybe that's what they need, or it might be that people are they're uncertain and then getting irritable with each other. So actually, we really need to know what's going on in this culture. What do you need here? Yeah.
And I think that's where we do ask questions. We've got surveys that we run, and then we've got what we call a constant conversation in our technology that helps us understand where people are at any point in time. So that does support our cause in making sure that we're hitting the mark in the live sessions that we run or the resources that we create. We do work with leaders and teams, but it's purely well-being. And I think what you guys, it's almost like you guys are the first stop, like for the individual to really go introspective, really go inward and figure out what they need, that then takes them on a journey outward, I think. Yeah. And for us, the value add is like, okay, cool. Now let's think of you as a human being and how we can keep you going through these little things you do each and every day, right?
Yeah.
The food you eat, how you move,
yeah,
how you take care of your mental health and who you connect with.
Yeah.
And then also how you share that with your team.
Yes,
right?
exactly. And how you broaden that out. Yes. Yes. So the four well-being ones for us are physical well-being, emotional well-being, mental well-being, and relational well-being. And yeah, for us, we put those, it's, you know, there's a real difference between what we do and a real complementarity, as we said. We put tools in all those dimensions around, okay, you know, yes, work with Pavelka and sustain your well-being, really understand what you're doing with the 4 elements. And then we'll also give you some pieces around understanding your own patterns and habits. And also, for example, if you've got 2 minutes before a meeting, how can you really quickly regulate yourself physically? Or how can you get yourself energized? Or how can you very quickly put something different in the emotional field in a relationship? Yeah. How can you shift that? So we got like a little toolkit, if you like, not a little toolkit, a big toolkit, a toolkit that you can then kind of grab on quickly. If you've only got 2 minutes, what can you do? And I think you've touched on that as well. It feels really important that well-being doesn't become this kind of, I've got this massive, you know, I've got to become a triathlete. Yeah. If you've got 2 minutes, you can use that 2 minutes really productively. And it can be really, really useful. It's not just 2 minutes, it's 2 minutes. Well,
yeah. And I think getting a person to kind of flip perspective and see those 2 minutes as valuable is the trick, right? And I think that not everybody gets that gift where they can actually look at those 2 minutes as a game changer.
Yeah.
You know, what comes to mind for me, you know, you mentioned a triathlete. I think goals are great. And I think it's really aspirational to have that person that can do an Ironman, an ultra marathon. That's all really cool. I think what people need, though, is someone going back to, they want to see someone that represents them, where they can see themselves and hear themselves. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that we do well. And I think that's one thing that you guys do well as well. And shifting from this goals mentality to this streaks mentality, like these are things I do every day. Yeah. It's not about crossing the finish line or getting really good. It's about creating a baseline, a sustainable baseline for yourself.
Yeah. That this is who I am. This is just what I do every day, as opposed to it's because I'm headed there. Yeah.
But that other piece is good. Yeah. I find some people, I don't know if you experience this, but I can be an all or nothing. And I like to go big. Yeah. So for me, the journey was what's my standard of living that doesn't, you know, have me at the mountaintop and then, you know, down at base camp.
Yes, absolutely. The extremes. Yeah, that's right. That I'm running a marathon today and tomorrow I'm just going to, you know, fall into a heap of Haagen-Dazs. Yeah. It makes me think of an image I used a lot when I was an actor and I saw a lot. I came back to it when I started this work, and it really resonates here that I think sometimes in life, whether it's I want to be uber fit and better or well or healthier, or I want to be, you know, a Hollywood movie star, but that kind of goal mentality of it's over there. And I had this image that really I found very useful. I felt like I saw a lot of people almost like they were standing on a cliff edge, looking over the ravine to the other side at the kind of glorious life that they wanted. They're just waiting for a helicopter to come and pick them up. Yeah. And I remember thinking, actually, you know, you've got to look around at what's on the ground here. What's the first thing you can pick up to start building that bridge? And it means you won't be, Steven Spielberg's not calling, or, you know, you're not going to look good in Lycra today, but you know, but you've got to grab the first bit of the bridge, and that's the empowering moment, I think, rather than waiting for something to happen outside of your control.
Yeah. I love that. And I think there's something around building that bridge and allowing people to cross it with you as well. Yeah,
that's nice.
That comes up for me, and just noticing the people around you.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, it's easier to build a bridge with a group of us. That's really nice. I feel like before we give a few tips, I feel like I want to really crash land us onto a reality map, if you like, and just take a moment to think about, certainly in organisations and in the culture of work that we are in, what we do when it feels a bit like well-being is shipped in because it has to be, because that's what we do now. Yeah. But then, you know, the session ends and the kind of taskmaster or task mistress or whatever, like, you know, back to culture of get the numbers. I think we've got to, I feel like I need to name it because I feel like it's there.
Absolutely. I'm glad you did, because it is. And I think everybody's on their own journey, individually, collectively, within organizations, in teams. Everyone's trying to figure this thing out. And I think some are ahead of the game, some are more mature, some are more rational. And I think it's about respect and responsibility on all levels. Mm-hmm. And that's what comes up for me as we kind of talk about this, is just your organization's not going to be able to make it as much of a priority as you need to make it for yourself. Like that's not ever going to happen. So it all falls back in the individual's lap. The conversation is, how can you cross that bridge to have the conversation with your leader or with your team or with the organization and whatever level that exists, to be able to say, this is important to me and I need it.
Yes.
But then also say, this is how I do it.
Yeah. And make it real.
Yeah. This goes back to the model that we use is share, show, become, right? So you've got the elements, you've had an experience, share it, show it. And that culture that you've been longing for, that family that you've been wanting to create, it's shaped by those behaviors because you were demonstrating and communicating what you did for yourself. And I think if organizations allow a platform for their people to do that, to dance on and shout about these things on a consistent level, not just on a one-off event, you're going to see people changing the way that they look at their well-being and the way that the culture that's wrapped around that organization.
I love that. And that makes it feel so doable, Jessie, in a time where I think people can struggle with it. It reminds me of something you said to me a while ago about those incremental small things that we can model both as team members, as colleagues, but particularly as leaders, because, you're really being looked at. And you really stuck with me when you said, put a bottle of water on your desk, put an apple there, move the chocolate bar and put an apple there. But there are small things that you can do. And the second part of that is that it's integrated. It's not the 60-minute meeting of everybody give me the results. And then, and then we'll do a 5-minute meeting on well-being. Like it's integrating it into it.
Making it visible.
Yeah. And it can be small things that can have a really big impact. The last thing it made me think of, I love that responsibility and respect, that we have a responsibility. And how many times do we all find ourselves going, well, I can't because I've got to do that, and they need me to do that. And it makes me think of the phrase that we use at 4D Human Being, which is, are you happening to the world or is the world happening to you? And it really resonates with, actually, at some point, look, the world is just going to keep happening to you. The organization is going to want the results. Like, of course it does. It has to keep making money to keep you in a job. Like that's what it does. But we need to just nice and, firmly but gently push back and take responsibility and happen back to it and say, yes, and we also need this to function really well. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. You're either happening to the world or the world's happening to you. Is that
you happening to the world or is the world happening to you? Yeah.
And it's so important. And I think if we do this right, what we're going to be able to show is that all of those things we've been talking about doing but felt as though we haven't had time to do, when we engage in those, all the things we thought we were going to lose actually got better. Yeah. Or the things that we did lose, we didn't need. Yeah. Right? And I think that we just got to jump off the cliff. We've got to embrace a certain set of behaviors that are ours to own. And we've got to prove that you can still have time for all those things that are quote unquote urgent and important, while also making yourself a priority. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we think about risk as sort of dangerous, but actually there's something about take the risk of living as well as you can. And it also reminds me of something that the wonderful poet David Whyte wrote, W-H-Y-T-E, in my favorite book at the moment, Consolations. And he writes about courage. Yeah. And courage, the origin of the word courage, of course, is heart, la coeur. And that we need courage coming from the heart to make these changes and to do that with each other. And, it really speaks to your connection and sharing the story, that we need the courage that doesn't come from a kind of, right, grit your teeth. Yeah. It comes from a place of heart and care. Yeah. And I love that. And that's real courage.
Yeah. Come from the heart. I completely agree. That's one of the things when we started our business, me and my business partner, Jill, we agreed we have to come from the heart with this.
Yeah.
Can't come from anywhere else. Can't come from the head.
Yeah.
As soon as we start getting into product development, it's like we're using our heads here.
Yeah.
Let's get back to our hearts. Right?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
Yeah, why is it also the heart? Okay, so I'm aware of your time. So I wonder if we might offer our listeners something to think about, might be just a phrase or it might be a tool or a tip. What would you offer someone who maybe was listening to this thinking, oh God, I know I really want to make those changes, but it's hard.
Gosh, I mean, I think that you and I both have kind of, through the conversations, there's a few things that have come up. And I think at the start, we talked about reality and sitting with reality. And I think that being a starting point for everybody on the other end of this, whether you're really pleased with where you're at or not. Like, let's sit in reality and appreciate it for what it is, good or bad. That would be the first takeaway. And that's a daily practice, right? It's not a one and done. So sitting in your reality is really important. Now, going back to what I said at the beginning, okay, now I know how I'm feeling in this moment based on my reality. What do I need to do right now if I'm in a place that I am uncomfortable with, if there's something that I need to do, what action do I need to take to feel better, feel engaged, feel connected to myself and to others? And I think that being almost the formula, sit with reality, engage in the behaviors that make you feel good, and not feel good through, an artificial stimulant of some kind but like really feel good. Those healthy behaviors.
Yeah, I love that. I love that reality check. It makes me think of something that I bang the drum a lot around at the moment is state. Is if you're struggling or feeling frustrated or low, is actually do one thing that can get you into physiologically into a state that's going to help you. Because from there, there's a phrase by Deb Dana, who works in the autonomic nervous system, called story follows state. That if we can get ourselves into a regulated state, we're more likely to be able to make some decisions or, do things. And that's similar to your get into the here and now, really. Yeah. And the other one that has definitely worked for me is we talk about habits sort of stacking. So stacking habits on things you already do. So when you clean your teeth, you could do a few calf stretches on the bathroom step. I love the habit stacking. I clean my dog's teeth now while I'm boiling the kettle. The things that you're already doing, do something on top of that, and that makes it easy. And the other thing is setting. And I've put my weights on the table rather than what they were actually doing, which was like weighting down my laptop support. So I couldn't take them off because my laptop would collapse. I was like,
They were supporting your work in a different way.
I was like, I'm never going to pick those weights up because I can't. So I decided that's ridiculous. Put something else as a weight and get them out. So they're sitting there now. Make it easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And your first one, story follows state. That was one of the things that I got from you when we did our session. Yeah. And just really owning where you're at. And I know that that's sitting with your reality, but there's something about having choice in that moment that you brought to life in that session, which was like, okay, you're about to go into a virtual session. Those can be really uncomfortable, right? I don't know about you, but I get really nervous at times. And just having the ability to turn things up or turn things down where needed, it felt like there was a sense of freedom in that. Yeah. And so I think that was one of the things that I walked away from our session with, that you gifted me, and I really appreciated that. Good. Story follows state. So
I love that.
Being
Thank
able
you,
to show
Jessie.
up and be your best.
Yeah. And you make me think, just very funny, you make me think of go easy on yourself. Like, I love the end a sentence with yet or today. So, I haven't done that exercise yet, or I haven't done that exercise today, so that you can go easy on yourself. Don't make it, I'm rubbish because I didn't do the exercise. I didn't do the exercise yet, but I will do tomorrow,
There's another one. I have a friend named Adrian. He's in the leadership development training. And he says, up until now.
Yes.
Up until
love
this
that.
point.
I love that, because it's embedding in the story you're telling, of course, but it will change.
Language matters, right?
It really does. So. Yeah, it really does. Jessie, thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. I know we started chatting before we hit record, yeah. And I was telling you, like, I'm really nervous right now because, but I really, really enjoyed the conversation, and hope we can come together again soon and share our magic with the world.
Yeah, me too. I would love to share more magic with the world with you. And there's so many topics that I would love us to discuss. I know that we're both so passionate, and everybody that we work with at Pavelka and at 4D are so passionate about this work, and particularly at the moment. So yeah, I look forward to more conversations.
Absolutely.
And I wish you well from my heart.
And likewise, same here. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 4D Human Being podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Do take on board some of the insights, tools and tips, because every time that you try something new to get back to choice, you are making a vote for the you that you want to become. And I love that phrase, Pen. I do too. And please do share this episode with somebody that you know would really benefit from the lessons and learnings we've been chatting about today. And of course, if you're interested in more from 4D Human Being, do get in touch. We run workshops, trainings, online, in person, conference events and keynotes. We've got the 4D On Demand platform for your whole organisation. And we do have a free Essentials membership where anybody can sign up for absolutely free to access some of our insights, tools and tips. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to hear more. We cannot wait to hear from you and to carry on the conversation.